And welcome yet to once again to another. The show will go on webinar. This is episode 14 of our pandemic crisis management series. Today we're going to talk about streaming events. We're going to share a little bit of information about how to approach these things. Some of you have been doing this now for weeks, if not months. For some of you, this is still kind of new, and any information we have is going to be helpful and get us all pointed in the right direction. I am still your host, Tom Stimson. Here's all the wonderful places that you can find me. Come stop on by, shoot me an email. Happy to chat with any of you. As I said a moment ago, this is the week for InfoComm Connected. I hope you guys are taking advantage of that. If you have not, get online, register for the event, get your confirmation email, go log into the show portal, and then you can watch all the sessions that have already occurred. They've been going on for 2 days now, and you can also join sessions live, like my session tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, and then I've got a panel discussion in the afternoon. So come join us during the sessions, and I've been attending several yesterday and today. You can chat with the presenters, ask questions. It's a really fun platform. Come see how it all works. Come join us. And the courses and everything are quick. They're quick 15 minutes, packed full of information kind of sessions. And I'm really enjoying them. And I find if it's a short session like that, I'm willing to take a gamble and risk a topic I might not be totally vested in, but so far I found everything very, very interesting. So do that. Of course, Avixa is doing everything it can to support live events, including this webinar series, so we thank them for that. There's a live events council. If you're interested in that, contact Beth Knight. Her email address is on the screen. We've got a live events forum coming up in July. There's market analysis surveys. The Business Survival Exchange is an every other week event where you can chat about the issues of the day. Often the topics come out of these webinars, but the groups take on a life of their own, and you might want to participate in that and speak more directly to your peers than just chatting on my webinars. But you're welcome to continue to do that. Let me help. I'm still free for anybody who would like some of my time. Just schedule a call. Here's how you reach out to me. Put it on my schedule. We often take more than 15 minutes. I'm not a real stickler about the amount of time, or at least until I've got another call scheduled. But tell me where you're at in your business, or what you want help with, or an idea you want to test or validate. That's what I do. That's what I'm doing for everybody. It's free. I've got a lot of experience and a lot of insight. And most of the problems that you're dealing with the exception of being in the middle of a pandemic, but the other problems you're dealing with, I've dealt with before. But on this pandemic thing, we're months into this now. So chances are I've had many conversations and plenty of opportunity to help folks that are in the situation that you're in right now, dealing with the issues that you're dealing with. So please reach out to me. Hopefully everybody has found the chat by now. If not, there's a little icon at the bottom of your screen that's bouncing up and down. This is where I'm going to spend some time. If you use the Q&A, I might not see it. We've reversed this. I'm watching the chat now instead of the Q&A. So pay attention to the rules. They're changing. So please chime in, say hi to everybody, let them know where you're from, comment as you will, and put some questions in there. Love to hear from you. Love to hear from you. So having said that, let's get into our topics today. We're going to talk about selling streaming, and I have to include hybrid events on that right now. We are seeing mostly streamed events. We're not seeing a lot of in-person stuff from what I'm hearing, though there are exceptions to that. There's certainly a lot of outdoor events that are occurring, everything from just movie night in the parking lot or out in the field to graduation ceremonies, award ceremonies. But there's also a lot of online business meetings, just like this InfoComm Connect event that we're having this week. Now, the hybrid part of this is going to kick in more and more as regions open up and people can meet in smaller groups and then larger and larger groups. And certainly events towards the end of this year, the beginning of next year, will be a lot more in-person events, but they will all be hybrid is our expectation. That's my expectation. that there will be a streaming audience in our future forever. Now, having said that, I'm an old live event guy, and live events to me means, folks in the ballroom. Um, we're going to have some people in the ballroom, but we're also going to have a remote audience. We're much more like the broadcast days and the satellite up and down link stuff that we used to do, back in the dark ages when I did shows. So there are some peculiarities to doing this. For those of you that are new to it, it can be a little bit intimidating. There's a lot of potential technology involved. And I will warn you right now, you don't have to understand it all in order to sell it. That's the beauty of all this. So I'm going to introduce a couple of folks who are on the call with us today, and they're going to fire up their video and microphones here any second now, and I've got some questions for them. But let me give you the introduction. Aaron Wetzel with CLE Productions in Des Moines, Iowa, has been a longtime client, a good friend, good colleague, been to many of the Jumpstart workshops, and we still talk very, very regularly. And so he's got his perspective from the middle of the country, where he's dominant in his region, but his clients take him all over North America. So we'll be interested to hear what he has to say this. And then Mike Fitzgerald from Audiovisual Systems and Support in Fort Myers, Florida. And while Aaron is more of a brick and mortar traditional production rental company, Mike is a hybrid version where he has very few employees, but he has all the gear and stuff located in his warehouse. So a little bit different business models, a little bit different type of clientele. But if we can get them on here, and let me see what I need to do to get them on. And we'll have a technical moment now. Panelists, let's get you guys going here. So Aaron, are you live? Mike, are you live?
Yep.
Well done.
Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Mike likes to show off his tropical environs, and thank you very, very much. I don't even think, is that a fake background or is that real?
That's a fake background.
All right, well, yeah, it's well done. Mine, it's fake too. I'm not technically in the middle of the Grand Canyon. But I do highly recommend, if you're going to do a background, please get a green screen, because the rest of you just look silly when you use the Zoom backgrounds without one. So guys, thanks for being with me. So the questions here are pretty simple. And I'm going to start with Aaron. And let me get my questions back up for me. I'm having a lot of fun today with technology, but technology is actually winning. So Aaron, when this all started back, which I guess for you was probably early March.
Yeah, it was I think about the second week of March or so. It was like, dark Thursday. I know it was a Thursday.
It was
and the phone started to ring. It was like, one call and cancel. I was like, oh, okay, that's gonna happen. And then 2 and 3. And by the end of the day, I think we might have been all drinking.
Yeah. Probably was a good move. So
yeah.
How quickly did your clients didn't cancel and say, oh, by the way, we want to talk about streaming. How quickly did they start asking about alternative ways of putting on their event? What was your first event of that streaming era?
Sure. Yeah. So they started right away. I mean, it was just, the conversation was right away, because, one thing that I realized right away is that our clients, and I'm talking to, I'm talking about like meeting planner association, type clients, probably not like producers and directors, things like that might be calling you and hiring you. But, our meeting planner clients, they didn't want to go through, it hurt them just as much as we were hurting at that moment in time. So, they didn't want to go through this as much, because they like doing events too. Let's face it, you don't get into this business because you kind of like it, so they started right away. And we had our first event was about a week and a half, if I remember right, after this all kind of blew up, because it was an association, and that was supposed to be a live event, right? Taking place here in Des Moines. And I mean, right away we started talking, and honestly, they were ready to cancel. And we basically, my message from day one was, we can still have your event, but it's going to be virtual. And it happened, and it was a big success. Actually, they got a lot of kudos at it was a local association. They got a lot of kudos at the national level at that point. Just, I mean, not only because it went well, but they had it, because so many other events in that time period were just canceling, cancel, and people still want to have events. And right now, well, at that moment in time, and I still believe at this moment in time and going forward, people still want to have live events. This is just something they're doing to get by because, let's face it, some people think we have to and some people don't think we have to, but it's just what's happening right now.
Right. And you've done virtual events in the past where they've been part of what you've done. How different is it now? Or is
it? It's quite a bit different. I think, the best way to say is they're just not as much fun, right? They're just not. We're in this business because we like loading trucks, unloading trucks, loading into ballrooms, working, ungodly long hours, and then telling good stories about it, right? Virtual events just aren't that much fun. We're doing them to get by, and but compared to a live event, the one thing that I talk to everyone about right away, and this still to this day, it helps clients, I believe, set their mind at ease, because let's face it, we're therapists too at a certain point, since this all started with our clients. At least that's how I feel some days. When you say to them, hey, we've been doing virtual events for us, it's been about 15 years or so, because back in, and I tell the story, back in 2008, when Wells Fargo got beat up for doing events at that time, there was like this shot, this knee-jerk reaction where a lot of customers were coming to us left and right. Well, can we do virtual events? And of course, at that time, it was more hybrid. But when you tell the clients, hey, we've been doing this for years, now we're just going to remove the ballroom and basically produce a little TV show for you, it just helps them set their mind at ease that it's been done before. Because even though they've been using Zoom, right, which is, let's face it, at the bare minimum, kind of what we're doing.
it's a little wonky sometimes.
Yeah. Let's redefine what's acceptable. Right. But they couldn't get through their mind. They couldn't understand or conceptualize how to take their event virtual.
Right. So Mike, what was your first phone calls like when this all started?
Kind of similar. Our clients were, in a panic, basically. What are we going to do? We've got this event, same thing as Aaron, initially it was, we're canceling the meetings, and then the immediate ones, obviously. And then as things kind of started to progress a little bit, our clients started saying, well, okay, what can we do? What's our options? And so we started kind of working on what we can offer them. You know what I mean? Like you said, initially it was just a lot of consulting, holding their hands, saying, hey, we understand, we're here for you. Let's figure out how we get to the other side. Now we've actively got some options or kind of packages that we're presenting them that have been pretty receptive. I agree with Aaron. People are kind of frustrated with the Zoom, what you get out of Zoom. Certainly for basic stuff, it's fine, but as a presentation platform or to host a meeting, it leaves a lot to be desired. And so I've been kind of scrambling with like Tom said, we're kind of a hybrid. I don't have a lot of employees, but I have some really great kind of permalancers, and I've been kind of reaching out to them, and we've been working on building solutions and different levels, and so we're trying to, demo what our capabilities are, what we can bring to kind of bring the level above what Zoom is offering, and so we've you know, we've been doing live transmissions for a while via satellite, and we got into the streaming business a few years ago. So we've, you know, it's kind of in our wheelhouse, but you know, taking it from a hybrid meeting that's in a ballroom and then expanding out to a bigger audience via the web is one thing. Taking a meeting from people's living rooms and offices to the web is a different animal, kind of, you know. And so, like I say, we've come up with some different solutions. Like I say, starting with like a managed Zoom call to, you know, a live event streaming out to like Vimeo or, you know, On24, any of these services. And then we've kind of, with one of my web guys, we've developed some interfaces to kind of make the meeting more engaging. You know, we started out with like a microsite where they have a web page, they land, it has all the information about their meeting. It can have a virtual expo room. It has, you know, expos or vendors. It has, you know, has like a chat room in it. It's got, you know, all the information. And then we also found a platform that we've kind of leveraged. We bought a license on it that's kind of a virtual conference platform. It lets you have unlimited one-on-one conversations. It's got an app. They can have video chats amongst attendees. There's like a page where you can find all the people that are registered for the event. You can see where they're from. You can connect with them. The expo room has one-on-one chats. You can have meetings up to 20 people. They can upload videos, PDFs, PowerPoints. So it gives them more of a real experience of what a meeting would be like. They can click on the general session. They can go to breakout sessions. You know, the way we've been doing it is we can upload the sessions within a couple hours for on demand. And so we've had some fairly good interest. We're working on one conference coming up for September, and I've been presenting this to some of my other clients, and they've got some pretty good interest in it. I think it might have a little traction. You know, it's certainly nothing close to what we were used to doing, but you know, at the end of the day, it's helping us bridge the gap.
All right, thank you for that. So, I mean, I like the idea that you've got the 3 tiers of escalating complexity or ease of understanding. But, you know, Aaron, I got to ask you, as you know, how do you explain to my generation how this stuff works? Because this is hard to get your head around. I mean, I'm not untechnical, but this was a little difficult for me at first to get my head around this. How do you explain to people how this works?
Yeah, sure. That's interesting because that's one of the main things people are hung up on when they call. Is they're immediately talking about, well, what technology do you have? That was
Right.
constant. It was like, so it reminded me of going back to the days of, well, you know, how many lumens projector, you know, putting how many lumens projector on a quote. And it's like, oh my gosh, you know, this is, you know, shoot me now. So what we just said to people, we said, don't worry about the technology. And this is how we sell virtual events. In a sense, I guess kind of the live events too, but is we sell, plan your event. Plan your live event. No different than you were before. Just plan the stuff. You're not going to have catering, we know, or you're not going to have some of the other stuff, but you still need to figure out, you know, are you going to have a panelist? Are you going to have, you know, a keynote? Are you going to have you know, the CEO talk, whatever it is? Are you going to have breakouts, all that stuff? Just plan your event. And then what we do is we offer different levels of what we call platforms. So we'll pick either our 2 main platforms that we use are Zoom and Livestream. And so it might be a combination of the 2. So we'll use, so if it's a live stream event, we'll bring people in via Zoom maybe and push it out via live stream. And we're just kind of at this, you know, good, better, best proposal for them. And the good is the one that they can relate to, because it might be a Zoom platform, but we're just producing it, right? Because that was another, I guess, element that came up right away within my sales team was, that, hey guys, don't sell, we're not trying to compete with Zoom,
Right.
right? I mean, the minute, I think that happened right away, and we might have competed against another AV company here in town, but the minute you start to be, compete with Zoom, what do you have to sell? I mean, heck,
Yeah.
we're a commodity before, let's, all of a sudden we're even more of a commodity when we start to compete against Zoom. So anyhow, so we really just try to get their heads back into doing their event rather than worrying about technology. And like I said, it goes back to, let's not worry about how we pick the color purple. Let's just tell me the shade of purple you want, and we'll make that happen. So that's how we've kept our clients out of the weeds, and how we, get them to choose to go with a virtual event.
Well, I mean, sooner or later, you've got to extract useful information from them. So you got to get them over the technology hump of worrying about how their event can happen.
Yeah, but that kind of naturally has been happening. I guess once you get them to fill in the blanks of, I mean, again, before, you didn't talk about what kind of microphone you use for the breakout. You talked about the schedule, or the timing and things like that. And it's similar. Don't get me wrong. We do get in a little bit more in the weeds with virtual events because you just kind of naturally have to. Like, do you want it embedded on your site and things like that? But again, we keep them out of the weeds and how we're going to do that as much as we can. We do share on our proposals that so like the good, better, best, we'll say, this one's a Zoom, this one's a live stream, this one's, whatever. And, they really, as long as we don't talk about how Zoom works or doesn't work, or the little things, that just are different, or that aren't as fun as they used to be, and just kind of plug forward with them. It helps keep them out of the weeds. And I would say this, there's some great companies out there that immediately invested in virtual. I mean, like they're going all in virtual events. They're competing with maybe the Six Connects and the Intrados and the blah blah blah. The many companies out there. I didn't want to. I want to get by and through this, but I think as soon as I invest a bunch of time and money and everything into this and make this like my business, we're probably going to get back into doing live events again. So, I'm kind of just, we're in the mode where we're going to get our clients through this. And some of our clients needed the Intrados and the Six Connects, and that's fine. We said, hey, we're the wrong company for you, but we also might help produce the recordings or produce the event. So
good, thanks. So, Mike, what do you have to say on all of that? You're the tech guy, and you're invested in some big platform stuff.
So we, like you say, we we kind of realize the same thing. We can't really make much of a living managing Zoom calls. You know what I mean? We can do it to keep our clients happy and to keep engaged and keep things moving. And one of the first, once we got over the initial thing, when I finally started offering our platform choices to one of our larger clients that's since decided to cancel their meeting in September, since it was an international conference, they just didn't think it was realistic. Now this is where it gets a little tricky. They were getting they had another meeting in the Middle East that got canceled as well, and they were basically doing a managed Zoom call conference for them, and
right.
They were doing it for pennies, basically. And so we had to kind of overcome when they said, okay, well, what's your proposal look like for our meeting? And I said, well, we said, well, here, let's get over, how are we going to bring the meeting out? Is it just going to be a managed Zoom? Is it going to be, are we going to have a web page? I mean, what, like you said, what do you want to achieve? And then we kind of reverse engineered and said, okay, if you want to achieve this, this, and this, these are the solutions we think fit that. Mm-hmm. And then we kind of gave them some ballpark pricing so they could get an idea of what level they wanted to engage at. And, initially that was pretty well. It was pretty well received. And then when we got back to the whole bid, by the time I put all the components in, and we offered we went so far as our very high end, we're building a virtual world basically where we can drop that person into, say, a desk in this virtual world with screens on the left and right above their head, kind of wherever they want. And we can bring in the panelists kind of like a newscast or something, but everybody's put into this virtual world basically through, we use Wirecast, or we can use Zoom as well, to bring it into the media server, visualize it and then spit it back out and then send it out to to a platform.
Right.
Now, when they first got the initial budget, they were like, oh my God, and I'm like, this is reality. This is all the equipment it takes. And so they pushed back, and I said, okay, well, let's break it down to the simplest of things. I said, okay, if we're just going to do a managed Zoom call, it's going to cost you, $10,000 or $15,000, for a 4-day conference with 3 rooms, if, now, then I said, okay, if you want our basic control room with text, it costs X dollars. Then if you want a communication package with IP phone interfacing, and we can have multiple groups, we can communicate, with you, with control room and everybody, that costs X dollars. So I made everything individual components and let them check the boxes of what they thought was important.
Mm-hmm.
And, at the end of the day, after, hour and a half Zoom call, we were right back at the number I was originally, but they had to get to it there themselves. They were originally, oh wow, that's,
yeah, there's definitely been this preconceived notion of the buying audience that helping with a Zoom call doesn't cost anything. And they came in with that. It wasn't because a lot of people lowballed the quote. They came in thinking it was no big deal and that there's not a lot of value you can add to it. And certainly at the beginning, Zoom was kind of like, all of a sudden everybody was a Zoom user and nobody knew how to use it.
Right.
And Zoom was trying to play catch up, and anybody who knew how to use Zoom was suddenly golden, but nobody wanted to pay for it. Aaron, what was
I would say this in regards to that. As soon as our clients realize that they still have to do a lot of the same things that they did with their live meeting,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's dealing with the attendees, dealing with their boss, data collection, whatever that is, they quickly saw the value in that option A, let's say, having someone produce their Zoom meeting, because they're like, well, I still have to do all this stuff. I might not have to order catering, but
right. They always seem to forget that's money they're saving.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this brings us to the questions. One of the questions that's already been asked here in the chat is, what's been the mix between who has scripted and pre-produced the videos for these events? Is it you? Is it the client? Is there another party that's involved in this? It seems to me that the whole value chain has shrunk, and all of a sudden we don't have the same middlemen that we had not too long ago. So who's doing the content?
Well, I mean, for us, I mean, we've been trying to, I guess, instill or present the value of ingesting these talks ahead of time so that we know that they work. We've confirmed everything. I've had a ton of pushback on that. Now
on pre-producing the content,
right? Where we were trying to say, okay, let's ingest the talk before the conference. Let's make sure everything looks good. We can clean up the graphics. We can edit out any awkward things. Our thought was that we would ingest 70-80% of the conference ahead of time, play it out live, basically on playback, saying that the presenter would be online to answer the Q&A questions in the chat box. Made a lot of sense to us. We thought that was, I'm a control freak. I wanted to have, make sure everything was ingested clean. And so when we played it out, we knew it was going to be perfect. Like I said, we've had a lot of pushback. Everybody's like, well, why do we need to do that? You know, and I'm trying to explain that, you know, I've watched what you've produced so far. You know, it looks pretty awkward when you're struggling for 2 or 3 minutes to get your computer to work and get your slides to share. And, you know, on these Zoom calls.
You talking about my webinar?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and so I'm struggling to get them to buy into that part of the thing. And they want to just kind of go in and bring these in, like I say, via Zoom or the other things, you know, and so we're just working with what they're going to give us, you know, at this point. I don't know, what's your take on that? Have you been able to get much to be pre-ingested or?
Yeah. So it's funny, like the first, I don't know, first 1 or 2, we failed miserably on charging for pre-production.
Yeah.
we got through the first one. I was like, how much time did we spend on that? I was like, oh, okay. You know, but luckily at that point, I have a great ops team that turned from ops to kind of virtual techs for a bit until, you know, we had to kind of, we rode that wave for a while until recently we're starting to bring in more techs to run the virtual events. Anyhow, what we discovered quickly was that pre-production time, what we call rehearsals, and that's how we present it to our clients is, and it's just an option. It's a per rehearsal, which is a person charge, and I think we do, you know, like an hour charge or something like that. You know, basically we plan on 30 minutes, and like I said, it's always an option for them.
Right.
And let's face it, you know, it was like our old, you know, a live client before where, you know, oh, I don't need lighting, but I want a camera. No, you need lighting with a camera. No, I don't want, you know, at a certain point, it's like, fine, you know, just pay me for the camera. And, you know, same thing here where, you know, you've got some that just won't pay for that rehearsal time, you know, pre-production time, but most of them have, you know, and that allows, basically we just take 30 minutes with that presenter, whoever it is, and, you know, check your lighting, check your microphone, you know, lighting, you know, don't have your window behind you, all this stuff, you know. And then in regards to media, that's been probably a struggle for us recently, is because, I mean, let's face it, we're scaled down. We've got a scaled down sales, we've got scaled down ops. And all of a sudden, some of these events, there's a bunch of media flowing, whether it's presentations coming in, videos coming in, you know, scheduling the rehearsals is a task when you have, you know, 10, 20, 30 people to schedule. So what we're working on right now is working with freelance project managers to not be client facing, but be just help ops, you know, to organize stuff. Because like I said, we're all trying to run on kind of a minimum, right? You know, to save some money and get by through this time. But that's what we're looking at right now to kind of help handle the stuff.
So there's obviously a production element, a creative or content management element that we don't typically deal with in the live events world. Our clients do. Or somebody they have hired does, and they bring the content to us, and we have rehearsal time in the ballroom, and it's all part of the same package. In this model, and I'm trying to address a question Mitchell is asking here about, you know, how much margin should you be adding on top of all this when this just seems to be like a stopgap measure. But in fact, there's a lot involved if you do it well and do it correctly and give the client the full benefit of this. So there's 2 questions at play here. Is one, you know, should you be marking up what you do more than 15 and 20%? And we're all going to nod at the same time going, yes.
Yes.
Okay. It's substantial. It's worth substantially more than that. And then I did see this over in the Q&A that Anthony's asking, how do you handle rehearsals? How much time do you give the client and how do you price it? But it's built in. So it sounds like in your package, you're expecting that if we're going to pre-record this, the 15-minute presentation is going to take 45 minutes to an hour to record. It might take less, but that's what we're going to budget. And we'll package it all together, and then here's the product.
And I think you can still stick to the, whether it's 4-hour minimum or day rate. I mean, it's a gig. I mean,
Right.
Right.
don't charge by the 15 minutes, we never did before. And as many of us know, labor is still has value to it,
Right.
unless you discount it.
Right. So if you can say to the client, here's what we're going to do over this 2-day period, we're going to record all of your presenters. They can schedule the time that works best for them. If anybody doesn't fit in that slot, it's an extra charge.
Right.
So now I can have a crew on demand available for that time. Again, it's helping the client understand, if we can get them to quit thinking about the how of the technology to what they get. What they get is
Right.
access to a production team in windows of time, and then that team for the live event, or a team for the live event. And this is what you get out of it. You get a produced event with as few glitches as possible, because no event is glitch free, and certainly online events aren't glitch free, but we can make them look better.
I think that when the client really realizes, there's 2 times when they really realize that it went well, and the first way is when so we built a studio, quasi studio. When they walked in, I mean, we had all the CDC stuff form available, but we had a nice chair, table, and then they saw all the crew, and they kind of walk in and went, oh, that's why you're charging me X dollars.
It's a real event.
Yeah,
Right.
but before that, we're selling something intangible, right? And that's, I mean, it is tough. But the other way is, if these events go well, especially right now during this time, people are so appreciative, meaning the attendees,
Mhm.
that they did anything at all. They're thrilled.
Right.
So it's like if you can hit the nail on the head with your event, I mean, it's like, they're ready to pat you on the back, more so than they were before. Before it was like, no news is good news, or
Right. Yeah.
or if I get a as long as the grumpy look doesn't look at me, I'm in good shape.
Right.
Now it's like people are happy about it. Again, this is that new norm that we're living in for now. Hopefully it goes away soon, but it's a good time to get to do a good job.
Right. Yeah. And obviously this is new to us. It's too new to the marketplace. So pricing is all over the map. But the approach that both of you are describing is look at the elements that it takes to do this, and what does it cost to provide those elements at a fair margin, and then what's the capabilities, what's the scope that provides the customer. Now,
Right.
how do we educate the customer to take advantage of that available scope? You have all these things that we can do. We put all these moving lights on the truss. Why don't you ask us to do something with it?
Right.
Here's some things that we can do, but what would you like it to do? Right. And it's the same conversation. It's still a show. It's still a
Right.
show. So in the chat, we've got a few comments here that are worth looking at. Joe talks about moving to more of a show budget and not a line item gear or staff, which certainly makes sense, because the line items really don't translate well to what the customer is seeing. We can talk about a ballroom and say, that truss that was overhead and the speakers and everything, and they can relate to that, but they don't see most of what we do in a streamed event. So itemizing those things is probably a little bit scary, but looking at what they get for it might be. And then another comment about pricing ourselves out of a job because we planned on the pre-production and post-production costs. We feared lots of scope creep, and that's new territory for clients. So like Mike, you said, I told them what it cost. They freaked out. So when you went back to scratch and you built the show back up based on expectations, and ended up at the same price.
Right.
So as salespeople, we've got to develop the knack for getting people into the understanding of their show. Like Aaron said at the beginning, what they want to do tells us what the solution is.
Right. Exactly.
And I think the in regards to the proposing what you think they want and then going back, I think proposals all come. What sells to a client on a proposal is something that they can relate to, and that's if they can. And that's where we start with option one. Is what we're trying to do is something that they can relate to. That they can really kind of get their hands on, and then we give options beyond that. And nine times out of 10, they're picking the options. but
Yeah.
we just try to get them sold on something that they can relate to first. And that was something that was a little tough at first, because we had to figure out how to relate to this, let's face it, in the beginning. And so that was a little tough, but from the proposal standpoint, we've kind of landed on some templates now where we're turning and burning proposals, in 15, 20 minutes.
Right. Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, kind of like you said, Tom, it's not so much as putting out the old style proposals like we used to do, this is the equipment, this is the labor, all these components is what makes it. Now you're kind of selling them platforms or solutions. You're like, well, hey, at this budget, we can do this, and this may be all you need for right now, going back to like Aaron, what are the components of the meeting? Do you have a vendor expo room that you need to, that you've got supporters that are, giving you money and you need to give some exposure to them and they still want some value for their support. So we have to address that component, we have to address how do we keep them engaged? Can we have Q&A? Do we have ARS? Can they have private chats? Can they connect on in this, the platform? We can, is it just a meeting that we're broadcasting for an hour or two? That's one level. Are you trying to keep them engaged and, make this more of an interactive conference? And that's where we've come up with these different solutions at different levels. But that I find that you kind of got to send out a skeleton of levels and give them a ballpark of where they start at, and then let them decide what level of engagement they want. And then it's easier to get the ball rolling with them. Once you've kind of got them to bite in a little bit, then you can start to pull the more information that you need to better sculpt the solution. And then, like I say, then you can take that. I've got one client, every few days, they call me with new ideas or new things they want to try and do. And, they're like, okay, well, what is this going to cost? We want to connect, like we were talking before, 10 sites together so they can have dinners in their homes and they want to communicate. And, and I said, okay, well, that, what level are we doing it at? Is it just a Zoom call? Are we sending a camera crew in there? How are we connecting them? All those levels cost different money. And, so once we start to talk the numbers, then they, like I say, they get more engaged. And then as we find the answers to the other components they want, like I said, it slowly builds the price up. And for the most part, they understand, like you said, we say, well, you're not spending money on travel. You're not spending money on hotel. You're not spending money on food and beverage. You're going to have to put some money into this if you want something above Zoom, you know what I mean? And so it seems like they're starting to we're getting more traction and more people are wanting to engage in a higher level. I think they're getting Zoom fatigue, and they're looking for some higher level solutions is what we've seen.
Yeah, good. Well, thank both of you guys for your time. If you'll stay with us here for a couple more minutes, I've got a couple of things that kind of summarize what you've said that I pre-produced, but I knew you guys would probably be on the same page as I am, so nothing here should be too real shocking. So and again, more questions, bring them on, guys. We'll have a little bit more time here, but let's talk about what we're doing here. For many of us, we've heard about selling the unknown. We have clients that don't understand what they're asking for. Sometimes we don't understand it enough and we're uncomfortable selling something that we don't understand, because let's face it, we're mostly gearheads and control freaks. And if we don't get it, how can we sell it? But the fact of the matter is we sell stuff all the time that we don't know how it works. And trust me, I've met your salespeople. They don't know how this stuff works. And they're selling it just fine. So when you're selling the unknown, make sure that you're thinking about the framing questions. You're trying to draw information out. You're going to assess the expectations of the buyer. You're going to let them know that you know enough about the solution, but you don't have to tell them everything about it. and then you're going to recap. And this is the structure of that first conversation. And let's look at what each of these elements talk about. When you get that first phone call, somebody says, well, we'd like to stream our event, and they're testing your qualifications. You need to test their need. You need to ask them back, tell me about the situation as you know it. And as Aaron said, just tell us what you want the show to be. This is not really any different. We're changing some platform. We're moving some audience around. Find out what they've done already. Find out what research they've learned about. Where do they think they need assistance with this? And that's when you find out that sometimes people just don't know how to use Zoom, or they don't have a Zoom license and they're afraid of it. Or their audience is too big for the license that they have. This is good information to have. Monetizing events. A lot of folks don't realize that they can monetize their online experience just the same way they did their in-person experience. It's there. Help them understand where the advertising go, where will sponsors pay for representation, and then explain to what happens next. So once you have the framing questions, you start talking about what their expectations for the event are, the scenarios, which are the three options that we talked about, that assessment, and the next step. So expectations, understanding the buyer's needs, wants, and unknowns. How exploratory is this inquiry? And I've heard from many of you, and certainly in the coaching groups, how 90% of the phone calls they're getting about streaming events are people who don't know what they're asking for yet. They're kicking the tires, they're getting some ballpark pricing, and then they're rushing back to the person they've always dealt with and taking the lowball price. But they don't know what they're looking for yet. So how exploratory is this? Before you write a $500,000 proposal that took you 2 days to put together, make sure that that's what they actually need. We need to give them test budgets. Here's the $15,000 solution. Hey, if you've got $100,000, here's what we can do for you. And then there are all these other capabilities that we can put a budget together for. Focus on the size of their live and virtual audiences. That audience size affects everything that we're talking about here. Yes, you can produce an extremely expensive event for 5 people, but chances are if they have 5,000 people in their normal event, they could have as many as 10,000 in a virtual event because the accessibility is so much higher. If it costs you $1,500 to attend a workshop and it only costs you $250 to do it online, you'd be surprised how many more people will attend. I think Avixa is finding this out in InfoComm Live, how many people are actually at these seminars compared to what they would normally get in person. Again, ask them, do they have a platform in mind? Do they have any preconceived notions that we need to draw out of them? Talk about who their audience is. And not to be ageist, an audience of people my age versus an audience of my children who are millennials are two completely different animals. Their tolerance for Zoom shenanigans is very, very, very low. My tolerance is pretty high. So, and then after all of that, make sure you restate, just sales 101, restate what you just heard. And then you can present some scenarios. Like Mike was saying, 3 basic approaches. Platform and facilitation. We will help you do a Zoom conference better. Okay? Or we can add some live event elements of it. We can put this onto a platform. We can create more of a service out of this, and we can coordinate all of your presenters, your pre-produced things. Or we can get into a much bigger scenario with lots of pre-production, multiple origination sites, bringing in many, many live speakers from many different places at the same time, and see what resonates with that buyer. Again, the impact that their event needs to have is going to drive them in a direction. And if they've come in with a preconceived notion that Zoom is just not adequate, and they feel like, well, they could probably produce a Zoom meeting themselves, but the boss says that's not going to be good enough, that's information you need to take forward, which is to what? State what you just learned and then explain next steps. Every sales conversation has a next step. You want to set that up before you end that conversation. here's our next call, and here's what we need to do on that next call. You may have enough information to say, let me make sure that package meets your needs, and then we'll have a conversation about what all the capabilities will be for you. Or you can say, I need to consult with the team before our next call, or here's who I want to bring to the conversation. And again, you'll scale it according to the complexity of the event that they seem to be most interested in or will suit their needs. You don't have to know everything on the first call. That's my point. You need to know enough to get to the next phone conversation. So taking the time to understand the 3 tiers, both Aaron and Mike have the tiers already in. They've developed some templates for their organization. You're welcome to reach out for them to see if they'll share it with you, but that's up to them. And then get to that next call. And then when you get to the actual sale, this is not line item proposals, as you guys have alluded to in the chat. This is a well-defined scope with capabilities and limitations. Here's what we can do. However, here's what we cannot do on this. There's lots of up to. We can do up to 10 of these, or we can do up to 60 minutes of this. And these are the things that keep the scope defined, keep the lines drawn so that the customer stays inside of it, so that when they go out of it, we know what to do, right? So let's see if we got a couple more questions here. Let me get back over here to the chat. If you guys read something you want to answer, just jump right in, Aaron and Mike.
I was gonna say, I was gonna, Bill mentioned the scope creep. And my comment to that is your salespeople can't be afraid to tell your clients when something costs more money. I mean, it's when they added a breakout room before, you charged them more money, hopefully.
Yep.
And it's no different now. It might be incremental things. It might be, oh, we had another presenter that we have to do a rehearsal. Well, that's whatever, X amount of dollars. And that'll help. And we haven't had any pushback at all from that standpoint, but clients want to know what they're paying for, So that's my comment to his question about, being fearing the scope creep.
Right.
Yeah, we've also had the companies saying, we used to charge X for this conference, and because we do a lot of medical education, CME stuff, and I'm like, well, there's value to those credits, and I'm like, normally they charge $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 for their meeting, plus they have sponsors, and our philosophy kind of was, well, normally you get 500, 700, 1,000 people. If you were to lower the price, would you get 2,000 people? You know what I mean? That if they could get their credits from remotely, and they could, pick them up on their own time, isn't that valuable to them? And I'm having some trouble instilling that to some of them, that they think that it should just be free, that they can't charge for it, people won't pay for it. And, that may be for some meetings you can't charge for it, but I think depending on what the product is you're delivering, I think they can create more revenue than they think they can from it. I think there's more potential than what people think there is.
Well, right off the bat, their costs are lower typically.
Yeah.
Even if we're charging more than we were before, I mean, let's face it, venues and catering,
Right.
Right. that if you take that off the budget line, we've had a lot of fundraising, gala type events happen virtually, and I think all of them have kept their ticket price the same, and they've had huge turnout. And another thing that I kind of preach to our clients is that people are okay with this right now. I hope they're not okay with it a year from now. Let's face it.
Right.
But right now they are. If you do a virtual event, and there's just a level down of being okay with attending a virtual event. It's different than it was, 8 months ago or 8 weeks ago or so.
Good. Thank you for that. Any final words of wisdom for our audience out here who are dipping their toe in this?
Well, what we've kind of found is that if we're going to be doing the live kind of thing, if we can get them onto one of the platforms, what we do is we bring the presenters into like a waiting room first, where we check their computer, check their camera, make sure we're seeing their slides. Everything is all dialed in before we bring them up to the platform, basically, or bring them into the meeting. If we're not able to ingest it ahead of time, this at least makes sure their microphone's working, they're lit, get into a different spot, don't be by, like I say, by the window behind you. So we try to coach them to give the best, presentation they can. And that seems to, there's a lot of value on both sides for that, that the client appreciates it, that we're, kind of holding their hand through the process. And, at the end of the day, it creates a better product for us to deliver and solves a lot of those technical glitches that can happen if you're just slamming it in live, so we bring them in. Like I say, we've been using some of these other platforms. Wirecast Rendezvous is a pretty good one, where you can bring in, it's very similar to Zoom, but it's kind of a private connection. You can bring in up to 7 other people into your conference, basically, or into your computer. And then basically from there, we can bring them into the platform individually. So we, like I say, we put them in a waiting room. We also can, we have a waiting room for the Q&A, so they can kind of queue them up, and we can bring them in to ask questions to the panelists amongst them, so it's, again, when you're getting to more complicated, with hundreds of people, there's more management on the back end side.
All right. Aaron.
Yeah, I agree with, from a technical standpoint, I agree with Mike 100%. I think my final message would be, keep forward looking, keep a positive message to your clients, talk about when this is over, because, we don't want to get too stuck in this. At least I don't, so talk about, we're going to get through this. We're going to make this a great event, and talk about next year. Oh, hey, when's next year's event? Because if they don't have it booked, they're not going to get a venue, so get next year's on the books, and even heck, I know it might get canceled, because who knows what's going to happen at that moment in time in the world, but keep selling. I think that's one of the most important things for me, because I had some clients that, they're planning their event or deciding their event out of fear. It's a scary world right now to some people. And we want to keep the events going in one way or another. So if we, because all of a sudden we became their trusted partner, even closer than the venue.
Yeah.
And so if we can keep that positive message, that forward-looking message going, I think that is one of the most important things that we can do. And it builds such a relationship through this time that'll help you launch out of this.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And something I'm hearing from both of you, and I'm hearing from other folks as well, is that there's a new level of intimacy between what we do and what our clients need. And so you are much closer to your client now. You've become much, much more important than the venue per se. So I think that's going to help us going forward. Finally, we are more important than table decorations and room drops. So that's fantastic news, and hopefully we can keep that going. So thank you, guys. This has been wonderful. I appreciate you, both of you, very, very much, as you know, and I will thank you for this for a long time. So thank you for being with us, Aaron and Mike, and if everybody. Go ahead.
Say one more comment. I think, Tom, I think you're right. I think next year especially, I think we're going to see a hybrid model, coming out. I think there may be smaller groups coming to the hotels when they do. And I think there's still going to be, I think we're going to see some spill out of this in the future, that people are going to say, well, we're only going to bring 200 people instead of 500 people. And we want to stream out these key sessions to the employees, especially the employees that now may be working from home for the future. You know what I mean? I think streaming, it's always been part of our meeting, you know, in the last, you know, years, but I think we're going to see a bigger hybrid, you know, fixture moving forward, at least for the next couple of years.
Agreed. Agreed. All right. Well, thank you guys very much. I know we will talk again soon. And I'll get the last word because, of course, hey, it's my webinar. Next week, we're going to talk about some post-pandemic staffing. A lot of staffing questions going on right now, especially as PPP runs out here in the U.S. So send some questions in advance you'd like us to speak about, but please join us live and we will answer all your questions that we can during that. And if you need help with the better selling process or help with your team or figuring out what your product offerings need to be, I'm happy to offer you guys micro coaching at a short coaching engagement at a pandemic pricing fees. So feel free to reach out to me and let's have a conversation about that. And so thank you guys all very much. I'll have the recording up here very shortly and we will see you all next week. Cheers.